And now we're going to jump into magic moments at scale, leveraging AI to drive marketing efficiency. You're going to hear from Richard Dyer, who's the Director of Engineering at Outdoorsy, and Stephen Schuler, who is Director of Product Marketing at Twilio Segment.
Thank you very much. Thank you all for being here. My name is Steve Schuler. This is Richard. And Richard works for Outdoorsy. I work for Twilio Segment. And Outdoorsy, as many of you may know, is like RV rentals combined with Airbnb, right? Good description?
Pretty good.
Yeah.
It's close enough.
So where I want to start, actually, is with a personal story. So, you know, I know AI, right, is in the title here, but we'll start with a very analog story. In the summer of 2007, I did a cross-country bike ride. I biked from Boston to Seattle, Washington. And along the way, my favorite place to stay was at these RV parks, because you would ride a bike all day, then you would get there, and you would have a hot shower. They usually had good food. They were in amazing locations, some of the most beautiful places I've ever been in the country, and super friendly people. And so I really got to appreciate that RV community. And that really brings me to the first question I have for you, which is tell us a little bit more about Outdoorsy and what brought you to the company and why you appreciate that.
So I'll first say you probably made our founders very happy with that story, because that was essentially their founding story. Is, you know, they work for big companies and we're just kind of tired of the rat race. All they do is travel. So like they spend a lot of time at these RV parks. We actually just bought a couple. I think we have 3 now. So that leads me to me. My story's a little bit sadder, but like when I think of being outdoors and camping and things like that, you know, I used to take my dog out on walks on the beach when I lived in California. We'd go hiking. It's like very outdoorsy sort of activities. And you know, when she died, she was old. It's fine. It's not a sad story. We actually went camping down at a campground down at Big Sur. Spent the weekend there. It was like a good, loving memory to kind of honor her. And that was like, I don't want to say that was a reason I moved to Montana, because I'm in Bozeman right now. But it definitely kind of played a part into like, what does it mean to be outdoorsy? What do you want to do when you go outside? And if you're in Montana, you better be kind of liking outdoor stuff. Like, you want to ski, you want to hike. If not, you shouldn't be going to Montana.
I love it. So you got 2 outdoor enthusiasts here, but of course we're here to talk about technology. So we talked a little bit about what Outdoorsy does. Just to mention this briefly in case anyone's not familiar, Twilio Segment is the leading customer data platform. And so the way we describe a CDP is that it's a tool to help you collect customer data from places like websites, apps, your data warehouse, unify that into customer profiles, and then activate it on platforms like Movable and other places to create more personalized outreach, more efficient marketing, and drive those campaigns. And that's what we're going to talk about today, is how Richard and his team were able to do that. So this is actually a diagram of Twilio Segment's what we call like go-to-market model in our data maturity book. All right? There's a few steps you have to take. You define the goals that you want to take as a business. You prioritize the outcomes. You define data flows. You unlock use cases. You expand the use cases, and then you get the strategic outcomes that you're looking at. So this is the journey that we like to take our customers on. And so I want to start at the beginning of your journey with Segment and understand what were the business goals heading into this project?
So this is actually the second time that I've actually worked with Segment. Both of them were very similar, so it's a very consistent message when you're talking about like defining these goals and then kind of the strategic outcomes there. We kind of had 3 core things when we tackled our migration to Segment. First, our old CDP was a homegrown system. You know, it was built by our tech founder, and as companies do, they grow, and it kind of became unwieldy. And so, like over time, you know, you have more asks from marketing. We're on the engineering side, so like things got added, things were changed. You wanted different integrations, and people come and people go, and so there was nobody really at the company anymore. So that was kind of the first thing. Is like we need something consistent. We need a vendor we can rely on. The second was related to that, because it was a homegrown system, a lot of our data wasn't really that accurate. Like we couldn't necessarily rely on it, and so the cost of acquisition was higher than it should be. Is like we maybe were spending more money on some of the target advertising or some of the marketing campaigns. And so that was the second thing related to the first. And then I think third would be from an engineering and product side. I know this is like primarily marketing. We really wanted to use things like that from our version of strategic outcomes. So what are the users doing? What are they doing in the app that maybe we could do something? A good example of that, this is pre-segment, is like now we have an insurance company. So like Roamly is one of the things that powers like our, if you have claims against your RV, if you're renting your RV, and then that's also what I said earlier is like we have our own campgrounds, is that drove the information that was kind of directing where our users were, what campgrounds should we buy. And that was definitely driven by like the CDP type of platform.
Okay, I love it. So better business data, better business outcomes, right?
Exactly.
So taking a look at this, next step is you got to connect a bunch of things in order to get that unified view of the customer. So what were the mission critical things that you felt like you needed to connect to create that single customer view for your business?
So at Outdoorsy, like our kind of primary driver when we talk about analytics, when we're talking about like what are we doing for our users, is what we call booking seal rate. So a user comes in from the top of the funnel, they search, they might find something, they engage with a host, there's some messaging back and forth, they make a booking, that booking gets confirmed, they pay somebody, then we pay the host. So there's a whole flow from kind of the top to bottom. And each one of those things are very different aspects. So we have Elasticsearch, we have our own homegrown booking system. We have Twilio Segment for either messaging on the Twilio side, but then the CDP side is Segment, Stripe payments. All of these things are very different. And again, going back to like our own homegrown system didn't really provide those integration points. It was somebody we'd have to pull from engineering. I'm engineering. I've got to determine what my team's doing. And so Segment kind of enabled those things. So we really drove an effort from the business side of we're going to kind of instrument these events inside of all these different systems so that, you know, after a few months, and it was really quick to drive forward, even like from a prototype perspective, getting them up on board was relatively quickly, putting it in the app, putting it in our search, so that over time we now have like kind of from the top of the funnel to the actual checkout flow, we have a pretty clear view, and that was all driven by Segment. So each of those things, again, app, payments, messaging, search, things like that.
It creates that whole view of what the customer is
Exactly.
doing.
And that's a very limited view. There's a lot more that's going on, but that's kind of our primary flow when we look at
Of course,
the
yeah.
customer
I'm
journey.
sure you got a lot more tools than that. We simplified it a little bit. All right, so you spent the effort to set that up. You get that unified view of the customer. What are the use cases? What are the things that you actually wanted to do in order to take advantage of now having that unified view of the customer?
So I know I'm talking to a lot of marketing people and probably some tech people, but like when you talk about like user acquisition, you have that top of the funnel. Like that's kind of the number one thing. So that's generally you go to outdoorsy.com, you search for an RV. And what do you do there? Like, do you want to reserve it? Do you want to like find availability? Things like that. That's kind of the number one thing we're looking at when we look at user engagement. And the real thing there is like we see a lot of abandoned searches. Like we've gotten people into the site, they don't really show up there after the fact. So like that's one thing we were trying to figure out. Like what were they doing after that? How long were they staying on the site? Say we get the users, like that's the next step. We have a lot of on-trip behavior. Like, are they contacting the hosts? Like, I need towels, right? Can I use this toilet paper for an RV? Is a good example. Is like you don't know if you're a guest. Like you don't know these things as somebody who's renting an RV. So that's another thing. Is like, what are you doing? Are you driving the RV? That's another thing. Like, what's your location? And then again, that messaging is pretty critical. Like I say, that's kind of on trip, but you will talk to a host before. I made a booking and I was like, can you deliver this to somewhere? And maybe they'll say yes, maybe they'll say no, and then that takes a bunch of different looks. Like they may be using in-app messaging, we may be texting them, they may be emails. There's all these different funnels for these communications to happen. And finally, I'd say like there's things that happen after the booking. So you return the RV, are there gonna be claims? Like that, again, I mentioned we have our Roamly business, like they kind of manage that. Like we've gotta connect to them, like what are they seeing as far as like rates, things like that. And then also, do you wanna rebook? Like are you going and doing all these things again? And I think those are the things that I would say from the user journey perspective, you're taking you from the start to getting your RV to returning it, and then again, hopefully completing that cycle again.
I love it. And you mentioned to me you've got a marketing partner, Jamie, and the abandoned search use case was one that was really important to her. Why was that so important to her and your business?
I mean, the big thing there is that top of funnel kind of acquisition that we have is like, if we don't capture them at search, we're not going to get them later down. Like that's the core metric that we're always following of how good is our search? You know, we have all these search ranking algorithms that we can change, but like what is driving that? And so she came to us and like, you know, she'll ask questions of like, how many users did this? Like how many didn't do this? What does that look like? And Segment really was there from a manual perspective, at least now, to kind of engage on that way. And so like that's a good example of how we engage with marketing. I know on the like 2 slides ago, engineering and product are kind of later in that flow, but like the marketing and product team will kind of join at the beginning. And so she's kind of coming at that middle point to be like, oh, I need to do a little bit of discovery and kind of like search on these things. But the search is always like probably I spend half of my time a week dealing with. Like, what are we talking about with search?
Okay, so now let's connect the dots between this unified profile, the abandoned search use case, which sounds like it's really important to your marketing team, and AI and Movable Ink. So I think we've all seen stats like this. I mean, these were some that stood out to me recently. AI is really like just changing the marketing game. This is from a growth report in 2023 that Twilio Segment published. 83% of the respondents are using AI on their marketing channels. 54% plan to spend more money on AI-driven campaigns, and 60% of businesses say quality, accurate data is an important ingredient to growth. So how did AI help you with this abandoned cart situation?
So this is the $1 million question.
Yeah.
I think like, what is AI? What isn't AI? I think we might all have AI fatigue. On engineering, I do. I'm asked like, how can you use AI for these things? And I think, luckily for us, like Apple just had their event, and I think they kind of hit it out of the park with like what you can really do with AI. I think historically and previously, you look at Google or you look at OpenAI, they're very general tools that like, oh, you could do the world with them. And Apple's stance on this is like kind of what we're doing internally of you take a narrow focus at different pieces of that flow, and how can you enhance that? So we've done that in a few places. Like we're really just kind of kicking off that process. But a good example from that flow is Jamie comes to me and says, how many people have abandoned the cart in the last 60 days? I'm an engineer. I can, like, we might not have some data in Segment. I can go run a query in Redshift and like do engineering things that she may not know how to do. But that also takes my time. That takes our data analytics team's time. Like they actually have a queue in Jira that's like a bunch of tickets when they put requests in, and maybe that takes a week. And so one of the things we've done, we have a tool called Abacus that will take the natural language processing from ChatGPT, and we've hooked it up with, I don't think we've done Segment yet because we were trialing it out, but like our Redshift data and our booking data, and they can go in and ask that question. That's how many people have canceled a booking in the last week, or how many people have made like this natural language to get to these kind of real data analytics problems. And I think the thing you see there is, A, I don't have to get involved. I don't have to get somebody from my engineering team involved. But also, like, she's not waiting on something. And I think oftentimes when these hypotheses that the marketing team's kind of focusing on may not actually be accurate. And so they've waited a whole week to get an answer that doesn't actually support their hypothesis, and that like they need to pivot. And like when we talk about efficiencies, that's the title of this talk, just that one little step, it has nothing really to do with engineering, has like very drastically kind of like tightened that timeline. So she can now go in and ask questions and get a really direct answer without engineering's kind of support on this. And what we're doing now, like that's not taking our jobs as engineering, we're supporting that integration. So like that allows us to focus on one thing that enables the marketing team. Not only that, and maybe we can talk about this on how this actually connects to Movable Ink, is the beauty of Movable Ink is we send these emails and it connects to our search. Well, we have AI on top of our search that does personalized rankings that then kind of closes that loop. So it's not even only something she has to sit there and come up, and I know we've worked with the Movable Ink team and they've been great, is like, what are the steps? So like, you're a user and the first step is this, and then here's the second step, and here's the third step. If we've enhanced our search, it really does kind of empower that aspect so that you've got AI on the front and AI on the end, and it's actually completing a compelling like life cycle for the users. It's not a AI saving the world. It's just making our lives a lot faster and a lot more efficient. Like the process from start to finish is significantly faster. I think the first campaign we did was, it took a month or two to kind of go through that whole process. If we're using AI to get rid of those things, it's like a week. Like you could kind of really tighten those things down to 1, 2, 3, 4 days.
I love it. So, just to connect some of the dots here, we've got all the data coming together using Twilio Segment to create those unified profiles. Now you can query the data and create lists of users that have certain behaviors like abandoned cart, abandoned search. And now you want to message them, right? And you want to say something to them. So how does Movable Ink help create that message that's a personalized message to that audience?
So this is a great question, and like kind of the core of what Movable Ink does for us is, historically we use Iterable for our messaging campaigns, and we'll create those cohorts, send out an email blast, and it's like something kind of static. Like it's nothing to do with Movable Ink, it's just how we've kind of have tackled it. And it'll be like, oh, here's deals in your area, something very constrained to a specific use case. Movable Ink has changed it where when they open that email, it is a custom live update based on actual updated results. So like we're a marketplace that's peer-to-peer, there's availability, it may not be available, maybe the RV's gone, that's actually something we kind of struggled with. You don't want to show that to people. Like I've had this happen, I had an RV get canceled. I don't want to click the button and be like, there's nothing there, or I click to go book it. It should be very quick and fast for the user. Yep. So Movable Ink's thing has been that now when they open this, it's a real-time update of our live inventory. That pops up. There's like different configurations, like do we want to show a 4-pack, a 2-pack, one if there's only one. And we've seen a lot of engagement. Like the click-through rate for this, just on like our first campaign we did, was up 68%. Like it was an immense increase that we're seeing. And I think the next steps will be, and we haven't really talked about this, of like how our platform works, but we have hosts and we have guests. It's a peer-to-peer platform. The hosts actually are enabled to make these kind of communications that they want. So we've enabled, or we're working on enabling them to kind of select and figure out what kind of campaigns they want to work with, depending on like, oh, we're running a summer sale, or I've got 2 for 1, or there's a coupon or something. I don't know. I'm not marketing. I'm an engineer. So I just do what you guys tell me to do. So like that's kind of the next steps of where we're going, is like taking that user customization and actually giving it then to the host, and maybe like work on some other aspects of our business. I think another one thing we have is something we haven't tackled, and I know it's a very sensitive subject at Outdoorsy, is like cancellations. Like cancellations happen. Like it's a matter of fact. Like I had one, like an AC unit died, and I was like, I don't want an RV that doesn't have an AC unit. It'd be really great to click that button and it's like auto book. You've already got a thing there. We know where you're going. This is the RV you need to get. And like Movable Ink is like literally a one-click button for that.
That's amazing. Well, I love how you connected all the dots there, right? So I mean, you've got this unified profile. You've got the engineering efficiency with the AI piece. You're creating this marketing list. And now you can use a platform like Movable Ink to actually generate more efficient campaign messages as well. You're getting better response rates. So, I mean, bring it all home. What's been the reaction from some of the Outdoorsy customers? Do you have a story you want to end on about a customer that's benefited from seeing all this? Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.